Well, this morning's fun in the forest is all about, I think, getting one or maybe just two shots. The light is fairly low, it's pre-dawn, and I'm just having a bit of a mooch around an area which is quite clear at the moment. Not much atmosphere, to be honest, but give it half an hour, a bit of light, things will improve. Now, the thing about my local forest, which is Delamere Forest in Cheshire in northwest England, is they're doing an awful lot of clearing work around here over the past 5 years or so to return the place to a sort of natural, boggy, marshy, mossy landscape. Very wet, great for wading birds. There's thousands of the little sods making a real cacophony about half a mile away. But what it's done as well is it's removed an awful lot of my favourite little spots and viewpoints. There's one behind me you may have seen on, I'll get a bit closer in a minute, a couple of videos. And they have cleared an awful lot of the trees. A lot of my favourite locations have gone. But it is making it different, I suppose. I can't complain because it's changing the landscape. And yeah, change is good for landscape photography. Having complained or mentioned that I miss some of my favourite little haunts around the forest, you know, that you get used to them, you come back and somebody's dragged it and it's all gone, you find new ones. Well, anyway, this location I have shot a number of times before, and while I'm rambling on I will put some of the original photos up, some with large format, all in colour I think. But what has happened with all this change is that the compositions have actually improved in some ways, and rather than hunt around for an hour or so and try and capture maybe 3 images like I've been doing recently in the forest, I think I'm going to stay here. I'm going to refine this particular chaotic composition with a standard 80mm lens, yellow filter, and I'm going to hang around while the light changes for an hour or so and just shoot the whole roll, because I'm only about an hour's walk if I chose to walk from the house. So I've got the luxury of being able to come back as often as I like throughout the year and yeah, choose my compositions very, very carefully. Now then, a little bit about this shot. I've chosen FP4+ because I have some in stock. It's a sort of medium contrast sort of morning. It's going to get brighter, so I think I need to avoid something like Pan F. It's a little bit, sorry, it'd be very rude not looking at you. I think I'll avoid Pan F, a little bit contrasty if the sun comes up, and the sun is coming up, by the way, over that way up there. And yes, I have gone for F22. I have, annoyingly, look at these little branches, little tiny twigs, and they are really going to get in front of my camera. There's nothing I can do about that. I haven't got the prodigious depth of field of a digital camera or micro four thirds. That's just tough. I've stopped it down. If they're in the frame, they're in the frame, who cares? And exposure wise, I have 15 seconds. Now the 15 seconds will translate to 30 seconds because you have reciprocity failure, which I'm always banging on about, and I calculate that with a little calculator app on my iPhone. It'll forgive a factor of 1.26 for compensating, so I just bang that into the calculator with the little exponent factor, and that gives me the resultant time of 30 seconds. So 2 frames, 30 seconds, 0 wind or any movement, which is lucky for me this morning. And yeah, let's just give it maybe, what, half an hour, do you reckon? And then we'll take another frame. So for this one, I'm pretty pleased with the way it's come out, to be honest. It's got a nice balance of tones. There's nothing too bright in there. Now this is an unmanipulated locally, and no manipulations locally. It's just a bit of brightness, a bit of contrast, a little bit of sharpening, but pretty much as is from the first shot. So yeah, let's see what happens throughout the rest of the shoot. Quite nippy this morning. Now, while we're waiting for the light to, I won't say improve, light to change, a little bit about why I'm using the yellow filter. Now, over the years I have experimented with filters. You've probably seen me messing about with the Bronica, trying yellows and blues and all sorts. Now yes, they do make a difference. You'll see improvements between the various filtration depending on the lighting and the scene. But one thing I've learned over the years is that overall, as a generalisation, the yellow filter is probably the best. It's a bit of a compromise. It's not as dramatic as red or orange. It's better usually than no filter. I'll be honest, unless I am, sorry, a bit snotty nose, unless I am shooting a situation where there is absolutely flat light, there's no colour, there's no blue sky, it's grey, it's rainy, I won't use a filter in those situations. But in a situation where there's normal lighting in a landscape, or possibly even a cityscape as well, a yellow filter provides a little bit more separation. It just improves the contrast, it just makes things look a bit better, to be honest. I will carry the other filters. If I had a lovely blue sky today and I shot that, I'd probably use an orange or maybe a red. And if it was flat grey and dull, I wouldn't have a filter on. But generally, get yourself a yellow filter. Well, I've decided to make a small adjustment to my composition because the light was coming up at the top of the frame, and that's going to be the brightest part of the image. And you know how I don't like the brightest part of the image to be typically pulling your eye out the frame, I always say it. I've gone in a little bit closer, probably only about another foot or so, and that's also given me the advantage that some of these small little twiglets here are now so close to the frame they may not show, or they'll be less significant in the frame. Compositionally it's largely the same, little bit of a tighter crop, same length, same filter, 15 seconds. So yeah, let's just get this taken. Still quite dull actually as well, surprisingly, in the actual scene. But I have got 12 frames on a roll. I've shot about 8 of them so far. I've taken a couple while I was hanging around. The light may not get up in time, so noisy birds. Yeah, 16 seconds. I've got about 4 frames left, so let's give it another half hour or so. Now, lighting wise, not a great deal of difference from the first shot. A little bit brighter at the top of the frame, but the biggest thing here is the composition. The composition is now weaker. I have lost some of the sweep I had in the first one. It's not holding it in as well. I don't like the bright tree being too central here. And not that that's a rule, it just doesn't look as good to me. So not as good, sadly. Now there is a little bit of light intruding into the back of the scene, and it's coming in quite rapidly. Now my concern is that in about 15 minutes or so, it may be too bright in parts of the scene and I'll have those harsh highlights ruining the tranquility. So I'm going to take 2 of my remaining 4 frames, and yes, it's changing very quickly, so yeah, hope this works well. Now, very similar to the previous one here. Composition, obviously, I've just said it's not to my liking, but the biggest difference, and it's to the detriment of this image even further, is the brightness which is showing up now on the tree trunk in the centre top of the frame. It's just too bright for me. It is taking my eye away from the beautiful trunks at the bottom of the frame. It's that extra light which just crept in. I thought it would get in there and might spoil it, and that's turned out to be the case. Right, well, I've taken the last 2 frames now. The light did come up slightly and just caught the centre of the frame, just a little bit towards the top. Without being too bright. It's going to get very, very harsh now, I think, as the light comes up. So get these back, get them developed. I think normal development this time in ID11. I'm not going to pull the development, I don't need to push it. So just give it a standard development at 1.1 to 1 ratio in ID11. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. I will definitely be back. It's so close to me. How could I possibly resist? And I'll see you again soon. Okay, so I did enjoy that brief shoot in the forest. Hope you enjoyed the video. I did decide on my return to make a print from the first negative. I thought that was the best one of all, best composition, best lighting, etc. Now, this is where the darkroom differences show up. When I processed in Lightroom, I had absolutely no issue whatsoever in recovering shadow detail and also bringing down the highlights. But when I went to the darkroom, I realised my mistake straight away with development. I had given normal development, but I'd given a little bit more exposure obviously to compensate for the very dark shadows, and as a result it was very contrasty, and I did find I didn't need grade 5. I did the whole print at grade 0. The whole print here in this process was made at grade 0. So if we actually have a look now at the darkroom session, I set up my Meopta Magnifax 4A, give it a quick wipe. That's an anti-Newton glass, by the way, not touching the negative at all. Now the exposure was 19 seconds, the overall exposure, 19 seconds at grade 0. Grade 0 only, no grade 5 in here. So okay, quick focus onto the baseboard using my very tall focus finder, because the one I'm showing you here is a 16 by 20 print, by the way. I made it in various sizes. So let's just go through the basic run. Here we go, 19 seconds on the clock, and I did a dodge for 1/3 of the exposure. Let's get it right here. In those tree trunk areas, they were very dark, so I've just dodged them out gently, just to remove some of the sort of black inky shadows there. Now, a bit of a burn was then applied to this bottom corner here for 1/3 of the exposure. This is all for effect, by the way. This isn't the real piece of paper in here. And then there was another burn for 1/3 of a stop, 1/3 of the exposure again in the top right. And finally, the last part was just to apply another 1/3 around the very top of the image, just to bring it down again, just to bring those edges down. So there's my overall settings for the exposure. Now this is the large print I'm going to make here on 16 by 20 Ilford Multigrade 5. I'm using the single tray method because I haven't got space to set out 3 trays. So you have your developer, and I just use fix here. You put the paper in the tray after it's been exposed under the enlarger, and you pour in the developer on top evenly, making sure it goes all around the edges. And you're basically going to agitate this for the full minute, probably slightly more, because I do need a little bit more time to make sure I've got the paper fully exposed, because it's obviously using a small amount of chemistry. It's about 2 litres I think here. And yeah, give that the full 1 minute. You can see the image emerging. Here's the magic of the darkroom. This is the thing that people often talk about. This is the exciting part. And yeah, I can see already that this is coming out nicely. Now I have obviously made smaller prints before this one. I don't dive in at 16 by 20. This is following on from 8 by 10s and 16 by 12s, and I have a few for sale on my Etsy shop if anyone's interested. I've got a few copies on there because it went quite well this printing session. So the image is almost completely developed now. All the shadows are filled in. The highlights have come in nicely. You can even see in the red light that tree, that lighter tree, is well differentiated against the background. You know, it's held in, and that's what the burning in did there. So I pour my chemicals back into the jug, leaving the tray obviously just with a bit of residue in there. Now I can use a stop bath, but I've got a nice tap set up now, so I can just rinse it off. It's only resin coated paper, so it's very quick to process, very quick to eradicate the chemicals, the chemistry from the actual print itself. Very little chemistry left on there anyway when you have developed it, because I do pour most of it out. So that's a quick rinse just to stop the action of the developer and also preserve my fixer. And in with a fix. Fix is typically about 30 seconds for resin coated paper. I give it slightly longer again because there's not much chemistry in here to cover the paper, and I want to make sure it's fully fixed before I obviously go on to the washing stage. So again, gentle agitation, just giving it a quick swoosh up and down, fixing the image so any of the unexposed silver is actually washed away, so it won't form out in the light. Because if you didn't do the fixing stage and you switch the light on, you can see the image degrade very rapidly in front of your eyes as silver becomes exposed to light, and you completely degrade the image very quickly. So there we go. That's it now. With the fixing done, you can put your light, Steve, put your light, there you go, put your light back on. And yes, this is your first proper opportunity to see what the print looks like. And I am very pleased. I'm very pleased with that print. It's come out nicely. It's a good balanced image. I mean, I wouldn't have printed it if it hadn't been. I don't like darkroom printing really tricky images. I leave that to Lightroom, to be honest. Yes, so there you are. There is my prints. Now I'll show you the first one I made when I tried to do split grade with a bit of grade 5 in there. And I'll show this closer up, obviously. Now that's far too hard. I mean, the shadows are inky black. and the highlights are bleached out. So I realised pretty early on I didn't need any grade 5. This is the resulting grade 0 only image with the burning around the top. Bit of a burn to hold this area in here. And the dodging makes all the difference in these tree trunks. It makes all the difference. Now, the big one came out like this, so you can get an idea of the actual size of the 16 by 20. Yeah, very pleased with that. It framed nicely. Plenty of detail in there with FP4. It's got that film look, you know, it's not razor sharp like digital, it's sharp. There's plenty of detail in there. I'm not bothered about these twigs being slightly soft, to be honest. Doesn't really interest me. It's all part of the way the eye would see the image anyway. It's taken with a standard lens, so it's very much your view of things. It replicates it quite closely. So, what an enjoyable little session. I hope you enjoyed the trip out. I hope you enjoyed the darkroom printing, and I'm going out again this week to the Lake District, so that'll be in an upcoming video. So I hope you join me for that. Thanks for watching as ever, and I'll see you again soon.